Hi everybody, my name is Ryan, and as part of my anthropology course, we had to pick a research topic to focus in on for the second half of this semester. I've always been a person passionate about reproductive health care, and given the harsh climate of the United States, especially right now regarding reproductive health care, I thought it would be interesting to study the sexual climate of Greece, and in particular ask questions about sex education. As many of you know, in the United States, there are various different approaches to sex education within school systems. My personal experience with sex education in the schools included various classes, started with a mini health class in 5th grade, followed by another at 7th, and then a wrap-up course in high school. This course in high school took an abstinence-only approach, while I heard of many other friends from different schools throughout the U.S. having great experiences with sex education, where teachers even offered resources for contraceptive devices and ways to contact Planned Parenthood. When I came to Greece, I had heard that sex education in schools was not part of the curriculum, so my curiosity fluttered with questions of who do they learn about sex from, and what are the components of this sex education? Under the guidance of Amy Plakas, I curated a research question and subsequent interview questions to ask people living in Pangrati. My research question for this project was, what are the primary components of sex education for youth in Pangrati? And I was successful in finding 3 interviewees who were willing to help me out. My first interviewee, Lorena, is a 33-year-old female who lives in Pangrati but was born in Albania. She grew up in Pangrati and studied in the UK for her undergraduate degree in political science, linguistics, and gender. My second interviewee, Kostis, is a 20-year-old male who recently graduated from a high school near the city center and is currently a business student at a nearby college who likes to curate music in his free time. And my final interview was with a woman named Maria, a 20-year-old female who graduated from nearby high school and currently works part-time at a cafe. After analyzing my interviews, I concluded that sex education in Pangrati is primarily through media, which includes, but is not limited to, magazines, books, porn, Google, and other web browsers, TV shows, and films. Delving further, I also noticed that the type of media consumed varied by age, where my oldest interviewee utilized hard copy magazines, literature, and conversations with friends. My younger 2 interviewees learned about sex through online sites and porn, and in particular, one interviewee even cited using American-based media. Unlike the United States, all 3 of my interviewees confirmed the lack of sex education in schools. Before conducting my interviews, I postulated that perhaps curriculum had changed over the years. However, even with a 14-year age gap between my interviewees, sex education in schools is not compulsory. In fact, they reported that their only encounter with sex education in schools was when there was a chapter in biology about human anatomy or the formation of the embryo. Thus, this education took a reproductive focus and did not include elements of relationships, pleasure, or consent. Also, it was very common that this chapter would be entirely skipped over as well. Despite this intense lack of sex ed, all 3 persons reported being encouraged to use contraceptives, but only one, Lorena, reported being given condoms to use during these courses. Based off of these reported experiences, one can conclude that adequate sex education on relationships, consent, pleasure, and sexual encounters is absent in school settings, and thus is left for the individuals to discover. Where interviewees did learn about pleasure, though, was either through porn or literature, where the youngest interviewees utilized porn to learn about pleasure, and the oldest, Lorena, learning about pleasure through Greek mythology and philosophy. When questioned about sexuality and sex, younger interviewees mentioned learning from porn and the TV show Sex Education, whereas Lorena, the eldest interviewee, learned about queer sex in conversations with their friends. Again, one can recognize the difference in seeking out information, which is related to age differences and may also be dependent on developments in computers and the internet. Finally, regarding dynamics during sex, all 3 interviewees agreed that there is a heteronormative complex with sex in Greece, where the male assumes the dominant position and the female remains submissive. Kostis reported having friends that still agree with this dynamic, whereas Maria was adamant about not agreeing with non-consensual scripts present in pornography. Overall, my findings are as such. Number 1, Media is the primary form of sex education for youth in Pangrati. There is also a generational difference in the type of media used to learn about sex. Number 2, sex education in schools is not mandatory and is at the teacher's personal discretion. And number 3, sexual scripts in Pangrati has a base in heterosexism and advertises male domination over females with an inadequate depiction of pleasure. Overall, this project deepened my appreciation for cultural differences regarding sex education and sexual practices, but also poses the need for safe sex training and comprehensive sex ed for youth in Pangrati, especially concerning consent and roles during sex. Thank you all so much for listening to this video and presentation, and it is my hope that you have learned something valuable about the time that you have spent in Greece and about its culture in general. Again, this project was completed under guidance from Amy Plakas in Anthropology, the Culture of Modern Greece. Thank you.